But I thought this was interesting. I thought Michael might have an interesting take on it. The headline, rationalizing the horrors of Israel's war in Gaza. And then I guess the subheadline, is that what it's called?
Yep.
The novelist Howard Jacobson has argued that too much press coverage of dead Palestinian children is a new form of blood libel against Jews. Too much press coverage of dead Palestinian children is a new form of blood libel.
So can we back up? What is blood libel?
Blood libel is an accusation that Jewish people use the blood of Christians in religious rituals, especially in the preparation of Passover bread that was perpetrated through the Middle Ages and sporadically until the early 20th century.
Well, I think that's a technical definition, but I think more. I am not an expert. I'm not Jewish, but I'm not that. The way that I read it nowadays is more like you're making a blanket accusation against Jewish people, and they're like they are quote unquote evil or something like that, and it's blood libel against the blood of Jewish people. It's kind of how I read it nowadays. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, but they don't get to change definitions.
Well,
people don't get to change definitions, whether it's woman or whatever, blood libel. You don't get to change
neither of those definitions is good. So either way.
No, I'm aware.
No, I'm not saying you. I'm just saying they're both bad. I think
yes.
they mean the same thing, kind of, right? I didn't know what blood libel meant until this. I thought it meant something entirely different.
I thought it was just the idea that they're drinking blood, Christians' blood. Anyways, you don't get to just change definitions. But I read this guy's article, and I think we can, from the outset, we can acknowledge that the conflict in the Middle East gets more press coverage than other conflicts or whatever's happening, right? That
for sure.
I agree with that totally. There's reasons for that, but it doesn't address the underlying morality of what's happening. Just because something gets more or less press coverage doesn't make it better or worse. It's the underlying what's happening that we should be talking about, right? And this guy's essentially saying we shouldn't give air to it because it's blood libel to air the dead children. Like, I don't understand that rationalization. It doesn't make sense.
Brad, did you read the article?
I skimmed.
I'm curious kind of what his angle is. Is it just that?
Describe it.
I can read. I'll read you what his, here's a quote from the article. He says, I think the justification for what Israel did was to try to make sure this never happened again. So he's saying, and then he says, and I think the attempt to make sure that this never happened again, the numbers are going to be inevitably have to be high. So what he's saying is they had to root out Hamas. And as a result of that, a lot of people had to die. It's just the natural consequence of what they had to do. And he supports what they had to do.
I see. I mean,
I just wonder, like, in other
argument.
Well,
it's an argument.
I just wonder, like, in other conflicts, like if there's a conflict, I don't know, like North Korea, if they start covering all the dead bodies from the North Korean government killing their own citizens all the time, is that some sort of blood libel against North Koreans? What are the rules?
I don't think that's I don't think that's the same thing.
Why not?
Because I think he's arguing that. I think he's arguing that that showing that is incorrectly portraying or incorrectly putting a lot of blame on Jewish people to the point that people then hate them for their what they consider accurate and appropriate response to what happened.
Oh, okay.
Right?
I
think that's what he's saying.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's an accurate representation. Michael?
I am fair and accurate all the time. So.
You're absolutely not fair and vaguely accurate. But go on.
It's not a blood libel to show Palestinian children who are dying. Sorry, wrong. We've read the definition. That's not what it is. If there is anger against the Israeli government that spills out against the Jewish people because of what the Israeli government is doing, that's a conversation we can have, but it's not a blood libel.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Then the question is, okay, then it's the question of what is happening. What's happening? They're trying to root out Hamas. Okay, you can make the argument that it's worth it to have all these dead children and Palestinians because the end goal of getting rid of Hamas is justified. That's an argument, but it's separate from, I don't agree, but it's separate from whether or not it is a blood libel to air pictures of the consequences of your actions on TV and in newspapers.
Fair.
There we go.
No argument.
We solved it.
Did we? No argument at all?
No,
I mean, I argued, but I don't know. I don't think I have an argument against what you said.
So let's take it. Bring it home.
let's bring it on.
Should we not have aired the deaths of children in the Middle East, in Afghanistan or Iraq, because it might create hatred towards the American people? And so that's the first question. Second question is, does it have any bearing on whether or not what we did was justified?
Brad?
I mean, look, I don't think that airing the images or covering the deaths of children is any sort of blood libel towards anybody. I mean, what America did to children in the Middle East is awful, and it made people hate America 100%. And I don't know, like, people weren't crying about it, really. I mean, some people were, like, anti-war people were saying, hey, this war sucks. And, like, look, we're killing like children, and that's not good. These are innocent people, and people are going to hate America because of that. I think that's, that I didn't hear anything about, like, you can't do that because it's anti-American.
So what is the difference?
There's not.
That's my point. It's not. I disagree with his overarching argument that it's justified, but they're using the blood libel accusation to obscure the question of whether or not this is just or not.
Yeah.
It's being used, it's being thrown at people. Same with the anti-Semitism. Am I making you guys uncomfortable?
No.
It's the same with the anti-Semitism, but I would say in the case, we bring it back to America so we can talk about it in that context so we don't mix the racial thing in there. We should have 100% been airing the dead children in Iraq and Afghanistan on TV. Why? Because it would have got us out of that calamity faster, and us killing people over there does not get rid of them. It makes more of them. More people who hate us.
I don't know about airing dead children.
Why? Why shouldn't people know what their government is doing in their name?
I mean, I guess it's the same thing as, like, when you have a murder and they're reporting it on a murder, they don't show, like, the murder, right? Like, you see, if there's a murder and they're doing a story.
What about the people he murdered?
What murder?
Dude, watch any TV show, movie. It's aired all the time. The reason it was taken off of the air, the reason it was taken off of the air in the 1960s was during the Vietnam War, because it created backlash to the war, and the establishment and the military industrial complex and the CIA didn't want that. So they decided to take it down because it created backlash to the war. That's the only reason they don't air it.
Fair.
That's what he's talking about here, using the word blood libel, but what he really means is it's deteriorating the support for what they're doing, and they're getting backlash for it.
Oh, I see the argument you're making. Interesting.
And I think if your government's going to do something, put the facts out there, let people know what they're doing, and we can make up our minds about whether or not it's something we want to support with all the facts. But if you try to obscure the information, I think, is the wrong strategy.
Well, let's talk about the Atlantic. How about that? And then we'll wrap it up.